Hey y'all, it's Sam. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to my January wrap-up. January was an absolutely fantastic reading month for me. I had been in such a slump through the last few months of last year that I am just so happy to have fallen in love with reading again, and I really think part of it is the TBR game I've been doing. I've been really enjoying it, and I also just have been really enjoying a lot of the books I have on my shelf right now. So that being said, I only read 3 off my shelf, but let's talk about that. So some statistics for January. I read 17 books. I really thought I was gonna hit 20, but I ended up using this past weekend, it's the 31st today, and I ended up using the last couple of days to clean up my house and kind of reset for the next month. Did a lot of cooking and didn't end up reading at all. So 17 is pretty good. I'm pretty happy. We were going from like 8 books a month on average, and now we're hitting 17. So very happy with that. I also read 7,339 pages, which is insane. I had no idea that I had read that many pages, and that's crazy to me. I listened to 6 hours of audiobooks. I listened to 1 audiobook basically. I'm not really a fan of audiobooks. I totally support you if you listen to them. I think they're great. I just don't personally enjoy them as much as I enjoy reading a physical book. My average rating was a 3.79, so pretty good month, and one of my books was a reread. I also DNF'd 2 books, which we'll talk about. So let's see, I had 1 audiobook, 7 ebooks, and 9 physical books, so pretty good there. 9 of those books were adult. That was my biggest category, which is pretty on track with where I've been at as a reader. I definitely think that I'm growing out of YA a little bit. So I had 9 adult, 1 middle grade, 5 new adult, and then 2 young adult. I think that fits pretty well. So then, to break down my ratings, I had 3 5 stars, 7 4 stars, 3 3.5 stars, 3 3 stars, and 1 2 star. So all in all, pretty great reading month. I'm super happy with it, and I'm even more excited for February. I don't know that I'm going to read as much in February, but I also might, because I thought that I had just read this many books because I read a lot of short books, but I read some long books in here too, so we'll see how it goes. But let's talk about each book that I read in January. So the first book that I read in January was Lore Olympus. This is by Rachel Smith, and it was originally a webtoon that has since been bound up into 2 graphic novels. So this is just a Hades and Persephone retelling, modernized, kind of new adulty type of graphic novel. It has really cool art inside. Like, I am kind of picky about graphic novel art, but this definitely has some really interesting art that I like. This book, I didn't not like it. I thought after I read this that I just didn't like Hades and Persephone. Like, that's kind of where I left at the end of this book. This is volume 1, so there is a second one. I don't know that I care enough to read it, to be honest. I think I gave this book, this was my 2-star rating. It was okay. I liked the art. I appreciated the story, but it just didn't really click with me, and I think it could click with a lot of people, especially if you really like Hades and Persephone. I don't think that's a story that I am as obsessed with as I thought I would be. I like a lot of different retellings, but I don't think Hades and Persephone is my favorite one. So wasn't my favorite read, but I can appreciate it for what it is, and I still think other people could really enjoy it. I just don't think it was really for me. But I'm finding that with a lot of graphic novels. I just am not super into graphic novels, honestly. So that was book number 1, and I thought it was going to lead to a really rough reading month because my first book was 2 stars, but it went very far uphill from there, I promise. The next book I read was People We Meet on Vacation. This is by Emily Henry, and it is one of the rom-com adult romance books that are very popular on TikTok right now, and for good reason. Every time I pick one up, I always think I don't like rom-coms, and then I fall in love with it. This book follows Poppy and Alex, and they were best friends for years. They went on a vacation together every single summer, and then all of a sudden something happened at their last vacation, and now it's been 2 years since they've spoken. And Poppy gets the idea to go on one last friend vacation. So yeah, then you get rom-com from there. That's kind of it. I loved this book. I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was so cute. I love Poppy as a character. I just think she is so much fun. I loved the relationship. I'm a total sucker for friends to lovers. Like, that's one of my favorite romance tropes. So this was right up my alley. Absolutely loved it. I thought the banter was super funny. Just an all-around like enjoyable light read. Like, this is the type of read you would want to read on the beach, but it's also really nice to read in like January when it's raining and gross and cold outside and you just want to escape for a little bit. This was a good book. This was a really great second book to read because I went from 2 stars to 5 stars, and then I was like, okay, we can do this. This is gonna be a good month. The third book I read was an ARC from NetGalley, and that is The Girl with the Whispering Shadows. This is the second book in D.E. Knight's Crowns of Croswald series, and this follows Ivy, and she is training to be a scrivener at this special magical school, and there's a lot of like mystery surrounding her background and the magical world. There's like an evil queen happening. Very, very much a Harry Potter feel. There's a lot of like little towns and the magical school. Like, it definitely has a Harry Potter vibe without feeling like a copycat. This was book 2. I gave the first book 5 stars. I gave the second book 4 stars because I did feel like part of it dragged on. Like, the first half dragged on a little bit long for me, but once we got back to the normal part of the story that I won't really go into without spoiling things, it got significantly better, and I was really excited to read it again. There are 2 more books in the series as of right now, I believe, so I do intend to read the rest of the series, but middle grade's not my favorite genre, so I think I might take a little bit of a break, but I did really enjoy this series, so if you like middle grade, definitely recommend this one. The books are all out. They are on Amazon, probably other places, so you totally can buy them. I will probably be purchasing them because I did enjoy them. Just haven't gotten there yet. And then for my 4th book, it was my one audiobook. So I listened to The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This book follows a journalist who has been selected by Evelyn Hugo, who was a really famous actress in like the 50s and 60s, 40s, 50s, 60s, somewhere around there. And she has been selected to write Evelyn's memoir, basically. And this is going to follow all of Evelyn's marriages and her romantic life and her story, all of the secrets that she's ready to share with the public. And she chooses this specific journalist who isn't a super well-known journalist for a very specific reason that no one knows yet. This book I gave 3 stars. It was good. I appreciated it for what it was. I liked the storytelling format. It just wasn't a story that I was all that interested in. I generally don't care about anything related to Hollywood in general, fictional or not. And I just was kind of like bored, honestly. Like, you're not supposed to like Evelyn as a character. Like, that's very clear. She makes that very clear that she doesn't want you to like her. But I didn't like her for reasons beyond just what she thought you wouldn't like her for. Like, I just was bored with the whole Hollywood glam. It's just not my thing, honestly. So I thought it was really good writing. I thought it was a really good book. It just didn't interest me all that much. Next book I read was also an ARC from NetGalley, and that is The Curse That Binds Us. This is a young adult fantasy, urban fantasy, not urban, like low fantasy kind of thing. It has to do with like the colony of Roanoke and like Satan and weird supernatural fantasy things that kind of mesh together. I gave this book 3.5 stars. I thought it was an interesting concept and I wanted to love it. I did like it. The things that kept me from loving it were the insta-love was really bad. Like, it was a really bad example of insta-love, and if I had read it in like 10th grade, it probably wouldn't have bothered me so much, but insta-love is just not something I can handle anymore at all. So that's what really kept it from being a 4-star. It also just felt a little bit rushed, but I still liked the story for what it was. I still do want to read book 2, and I think I could have gotten past how rushed it felt, and it still could have been 4 stars if it wasn't for the insta-love. But the actual story, the plot, the mystery behind this colony, and our main character's life at the beginning and everything, I think it's really intriguing, and I do want to know what happens next. I just wish it was a little more slow burn. That's it. Then, of course, I read my Outlander novel. So this is An Echo in the Bone. It is book 7 in the Outlander series by Diana Gabaldon, my favorite series of all time. Obviously, I gave this book 5 stars. I'm never going to rate anything Outlander less than 5 stars. It could be 5,000 pages of Jamie and Claire just frolicking through a field, and I would still rate it 5 stars. And I am not at all sorry about that. So this book I can't really talk about without giving away the rest of the series, and I feel like Outlander is so popular that almost everybody knows what it's about, but it's just such a fun, such a raw series. Like, it's so realistic. I've never read another series that deals with such difficult topics and such an incredible marriage throughout the whole marriage. Like, we started this series when Jamie and Claire were in their early 20s. They're now like late 50s, and it's just incredible to watch their growth and to grow with them and love with them and cry with them. I mean, so many things happen in each of these books, and the only complaint, the number one complaint I see in reviews about these books is how long they are and how detailed and intricate they are and how character based that they are. There's plot happening, but there is a lot more character development happening, and you will go hundreds of pages where not a lot happens, but the characters still grow so much, and I love it. And I think that's something I'm discovering about myself, is I love character based novels more so than plot based novels. Like, a lot of people, I feel like plot based novels, so they get really annoyed when books are like bogged down by a lot of character development and a lot of feelings and just a lot of like slower moving plots, but a lot of internal development that's happening there. And I'm kind of the opposite. I really, really like having that connection to the characters, having the growth of the characters, watching their everyday lives, not just the moments that are big exciting plot points. Like, I love that I've gotten to see every moment of this marriage for the last 20, 50, 30, however many years. I'm loving it. The next 3 books I read, I borrowed from a friend, but I do plan to purchase them. I rated all of them 4 stars, and that is the Touch of Darkness series. So this is another Hades and Persephone retelling, and I did go into this unsure if I was gonna like it because I didn't really care for Lore Olympus, and I was afraid that I just didn't like Hades and Persephone, and I didn't like the first half of the first book. So I was real nervous. So while this was a story that I didn't think was gonna click, it actually very much did. I started to enjoy it a lot more once the actual romance started happening and started really enjoying it. It was really great smut, really great storyline, really great characters, and I'm really excited for the next book. I also really want to read the companion series that's all Hades' point of view, but I think I'm gonna save that until closer to when the 4th book comes out, so it can be kind of like a recap. But basically this follows Hades and Persephone in like a modern Olympus. We've got Persephone, who has been sheltered by her mother, Demeter, for her whole life, and she was finally allowed to go to college, and she's studying journalism, and she ends up being dragged by one of her friends to Hades' nightclub, where she meets and is dragged into a deal with the god of the underworld, and it kind of spirals from there. So all in all, totally a 4-star series. Really enjoyed it. I feel like if it wasn't for the first half of the first book, it probably could have hit 4.5 stars, maybe even 5, because I did really enjoy it by the last book, but the first half of the first book just threw me off a little bit. But if you read it, push through that first half, and you might actually enjoy it. It might just be me, because it wasn't that it was bad. Like, the plot was good, the story was good. It was just a lot of like nightclub partying kind of stuff, and I just didn't care so much about that. But you might love it. Next book I read was my last arc on NetGalley, and that is When She Disappeared. This follows her main character, and I'm awful with names. I don't remember her name, but she is returning to her small town to take care of her father after he had like knee surgery or something. And she is returning to the town where her best friend disappeared like 20 years prior. So she has recently gotten divorced, she's taking care of her father, and she's back in this town that she does not like at all. It's the same town where her mom was killed and her best friend disappeared. And as soon as she gets back, her best friend's body is found at the bottom of the swimming hole inside of a cooler. So she ends up in the middle of the investigation alongside one of her old high school friends. We've got a little bit of a friends to lovers relationship happening there. We've got the mystery of what happened to the best friend. We've got the dealing with the trauma from losing her mom, different things like that. I gave it 3.5 stars. It was an interesting plot, and it was told, so the friend that she's working with works for a TV show that does like murder documentary type of thing. So they are doing a follow-up episode on the friend that they had done an episode on when she first disappeared. So it's told through like a lot of television type of stuff, which was kind of interesting. It was a unique perspective that I haven't read a lot in thrillers. I did think the dialogue was rough. And that just might be me as an English teacher. Dialogue is like, I'm picky about dialogue. I do feel like the dialogue didn't feel like real. Like, you know, there's a difference between dialogue that feels like actual people speaking and dialogue that feels like info dumping and writing an essay kind of thing. I felt like we got a lot of info dumping and a lot of stilted dialogue that felt more like they were reciting a speech than actually talking naturally. But I did really like the ending. And it's not that it's like a completely unique ending, like I definitely saw it coming, but I still appreciated the ending for what it was. I liked the twist, even though I saw it coming. So I still like very much appreciated that ending, and that kind of made up for a lot of the dialogue issues that I had. Like, I'm still really glad that I finished the book, and probably will be purchasing it in the future, because I did enjoy it enough that I think I want it on my shelf. So from this point forward, we began spiraling into an unhealthy Kindle Unlimited obsession. I am embarrassed to admit the things that I have read, but I also bought them, so let's go. The next book that I read in January was Ice Planet Barbarians. Because why not? So, for those of you who don't know, this is a very adult sci-fi alien smut-filled romance. Yeah, that's the gist of it. So this book follows Georgie, and she has been abducted by aliens along with a group of girls, and said aliens are very clearly going to sell them off for some bad purpose, but they end up dropping them off on this random planet, and they're gonna come back for them, but they don't, like, the aliens don't think about the fact that humans need like food and water and shelter, and when they drop them off, their ship pod thing that they're in like breaks, so it's a cold planet, like there's snow everywhere, so they're freezing to death and they're starving, and Georgie takes it upon herself to go outside and look for something, supplies, food, water, help, anything. And while she is exploring, she runs into this alien. His name is Vectel, and things happen from there, and I'm just gonna leave it there. Now, I do teach high school, and as far as I know, none of my students have found this channel yet, and I hope it stays that way. But if you are one of my students watching this channel, do not read this book, do not read this book, do not read this book. Do not go home and tell your mommy that I recommended this book. Do not read this book. Okay, so I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I'm not gonna lie, the first half of it made me so uncomfortable, and I was like, I am not gonna be able to finish this series. I don't even know if I'm gonna be able to finish this book. I feel awkward. The second half grew on me, and I'm not ashamed to admit that. I'm not. It was good. It was a good plot. No one's reading this for the plot, but it was a decent plot for what it was. It was intriguing, and it kept me interested enough that I read the second book as well. So this is Barbarian Alien, which is book 2. I believe I gave the first one 4 stars. This one I gave 3 stars. I definitely still think that the first one is the best. I ended up reading the first 4. Yes, I read the first 4. So this one follows one of the other girls on the ship after Georgie comes back with Vectel. I can't really talk about this without ruining the first book, but it follows a different girl, different alien, same type of scenario. And that's kind of what happens in books 3 and 4 as well. We just get new girl, different alien, smut. Little bit of plot. That's basically it. So if you like aliens and smut and Kindle Unlimited romance, this is a series for you. I don't know that I'll read the rest. I might. They were interesting. I liked the first 4. Like, each one had something at the end that made me interested in the next one, except for the 4th one. I don't really know who the 5th one's gonna be about or anything about that girl, so I don't know. We'll see. I might read it, but I'm probably not gonna read it like right away, but we'll see. And then I read a second Outlander book because I'm insane. I had no intention of reading another Outlander book in January. I generally read one a month, so this was supposed to be February's book. But we finished, the friend that I read these books with, we finished it so early that we were like, we don't want to wait that long before reading the next one. So we read this one. This is written in my own heart's blood. It is book 8 of the Outlander series. Things get intense in this book. I knew a thing was coming in this book or in book 7 the thing happened. Did the thing happen in book 7? Sometimes these books do. Yes, okay, so the thing that I knew was coming in book 7 hurt, and then book 8 hurt a lot more, and then more things started happening, and so kind of by the end of book 8, I am in pain and nervous for book 9, especially because book 9 isn't even the last book. So we're going to read book 9 now in February, and then probably have to wait forever for book 10. So wish me luck that I do not die. I have every intention of finishing book 9 and then immediately picking book 1 back up just to survive. Next book I read was a reread, so that is Deal with the Elf King by Elise Kova. I first read this on Kindle Unlimited and then I bought it last year, and this follows, what's her main character's name? Luella, and she lives in a world where the Elf King comes every generation to get the human queen, who is just a human girl with magic, and she has to marry the Elf King and live in his world from that point forward. So there's no human queen this year. The Elf King is coming and they have not found her yet, and Luella is the healer of her community. But when the Elf King shows up, things happen, and it turns out she is the human queen, and she gets dragged back to his world and forced to marry him. So we have like arranged marriage, enemies to lovers. And it was decent. I liked this book a lot. I gave it 4 stars the first time, and I stick to that 4 stars the second time. I really enjoy the relationship here. I think it's a super short book, so you're not gonna get like super in-depth slow burn like I would love. That could have made it a 5-star, but you do get a lot of banter. You do get the slow burn as much as you can in the amount of pages that you have here. And it's a really fun relationship. This one is slightly more new adult. I think some people still call it young adult. I do think I Knowing me as a teenager, this would have been too much for me, but everybody's different. So I classified this book as new adult, even though some people don't, but it does only have one scene, really, towards the end. So if that's something you are worried about, there's the info. Along with that, I did read the second book in this series, which is more of a companion novel, and that is A Dance with the Fae Prince. I have not purchased this one yet, but I do plan to. And this one follows a completely different character in a very similar situation. So the entire series is called Married to Magic, so every single one deals with some sort of arranged forced marriage and enemies to lovers type of thing. In this case, our main character is basically like Cinderella. She's got like the evil stepmom, and then she gets married off to a man who refuses to let her ever see him, but she slowly starts to develop kind of a friendship with him, even though she still has never actually seen his face, and ends up in the Fae world discovering that he is Fae. He is not human. So it kind of spirals from there. I gave that one 4 stars as well. That one is much more young adult, for sure. Like the first one, I still feel like could be like low grade new adult, especially because the characters are like new adult age, like they're 19 and 20-ish. So the first one felt more new adult. This one definitely felt more young adult. There was no smut in it at all, but it was still really, really good. I almost enjoyed the romance in this one a little bit more. This was one of those ones that I felt like could have been dragged out longer, and I almost wish it was, but I'm also kind of glad it wasn't. So I don't know anything about the third book, although I'm pretty sure it's titled something about vampires, so I'm intrigued. Ready for the third one, excited, definitely plan to purchase the second one of these. Those are the 17 books that I read. I did DNF 2 books. So the first one I have already unhauled, and that is Endgame. I don't remember who the author was for this one, but I really don't even remember what the book was about. I just remember that it had so many points of view. For a young adult sci-fi type of thing, it had too many points of view. It was like, I got to like the 8th chapter with the 8th new character, and just reading 100 pages of the beginning of a character story for 800 pages, like I couldn't do it. It was not for me. I thought the concept was intriguing, but I did not vibe with the execution at all. Just wasn't for me. So that one is the one that I unhauled as my punishment for not finishing my January TBR. The other book that I did not finish for my January TBR was also a DNF. I don't know that this one's a DNF forever or just a DNF for now, but I don't really have any intentions of going back to it anytime soon, and that is Realmbreaker by Victoria Aveyard. I just wasn't really in the mood for this. High fantasy. I read like the prologue, and then I was just kind of not feeling it at the moment. I think it was good writing, and I think it's a good story and a good idea. I just wasn't vibing with it. Wasn't in the mood for it. Wasn't interested in the story. And it was taking me so long to read like 30 pages that I was like, I'm just gonna give up. So that was everything that I read in January. If you want to see what I'm going to read in February, I will link the TBR video for that below. If you want to see how my TBR game went in January, I will also link that one below. And if you want to hit the subscribe button, I would appreciate that. And you can hit the little bell icon to be notified whenever I post things. And I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye!
Oh my love, you're such a fragile thing, I know. And with the wind